So hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today at the Afterlife Discussions meeting. Today we've got a special guest, Dr. Anne Charlotte Valentin, also known as Dr. Lotte. And Dr. Lotte has had two near-death experiences that led her to start medical school at age 54, which is amazing. So she's a physician, an evidential medium, spiritual educator, speaker, and author of the book Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul. And Dr. Lotte teaches workshops in spiritual development and expanding consciousness, spiritual embodiment, as well as psychic and mediumship development. She lives in Phoenix, Arizona, where she operates the Center for Integrative Medicine, as well as her spiritual center, Divine Spiritual Essence. So if you want to know more about Dr. Lotte, please visit her website, drlotte.com, drlotte.com. So welcome, Dr. Lotte, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So where do you want to begin? Start at the beginning. How did it all happen?
Right. Yeah, let me start at the beginning. So I had two near-death experiences. So I'll be talking about the near-death experience and then also the transformation that happens after you have these experiences and then the afterlife. Because I became a medium as a result of all these experiences. So we're going to start from the beginning and then we're going to end up with a mediumship in the end. So I had two near-death experiences. One was in 1992 and one in 1994. I was an atheist at the time. I was born and raised in Scandinavia, in Sweden, which is in the northern part of Europe, right underneath the North Pole. And I was raised Lutheran because everybody's a Lutheran or was a Lutheran back then in Sweden. And I was confirmed at the age of 14, though we never went to church. It was more just a formality. And if you couldn't touch it, see it, smell it, or hear it, as far as I was concerned, it did not exist. And I thought, when you die, that's it. Everything is just black. That's it. You're gone. And I did not believe in angels, did not believe in the afterlife, did not believe in God, Jesus, religion, nothing. Okay, so this is how I went into my first near-death experience. So my first near-death experience happened after my third child was born. And so I already had two kids and they were 6 and 3.5 at the time. And there were two boys. And then I was about to give birth to my baby girl. And we took off for the hospital. It was early in the morning. And we get to the hospital. I'm on the labor table. I'm contracting 3 minutes apart. And a 7.4 earthquake hits. And the hospital is built on rollers. And so the whole hospital just moves back and forth. So this is one of the times in my life when I thought I was going to die, and the whole hospital was just rolling back and forth. They were actually leaning over me to hold me onto the table so I wouldn't just levitate off. And the whole wall was just, windows from floor to ceiling. And I thought, this is it, and we're stopped. So eventually it stops, and my labor kicked back in like 30 minutes later, and I gave birth to a baby girl. And then we had another earthquake, a 7.2 earthquake. And finally, they give me the baby to hold. And as they put the baby on my chest, I have this excruciating pain. And I'm just leaning backwards and just screaming for my husband, take the baby, take the baby. Like my uterus, chose an IV, and they kept me in a hospital another day. And then they said, okay, well, everything looks good. So we're going to send you home. And then about 10 days later, my friends were having a baby shower for me in the park because I had a girl and they wanted to give me all the girly things because I had two boys before. And I go to the restroom in the park and this huge blood clot comes out, like literally the size of a baby's head. And I'm looking at that, and my husband comes home and he takes me to the emergency room, and they keep me for observation. And after about 2 or 3 hours, they say, well, could have been a second lining, so, go home. And then the next day, I hemorrhage again. Another huge blood clot comes out and drops into the toilet. So we called the ER and we say, what should we do? Should we come back? And they said, well, no, just go to the doctor tomorrow morning, because the bleeding stopped while my husband was on the phone. So then the next morning we go see the doctor, and he examines me, and he says the same thing. Well, no, nothing much is happening right now. Could have been, a second lining coming out again for the second time. So they sent me on my way. And then that evening I hemorrhaged again. Another huge blood clot comes out. So we go back to the ER, and they put me in a room. They come in, they examine me, and they say, well, nothing much is happening right now. And they leave me there, and they close the door, and I don't have a bell to ring. I'm alone in the room, and I'm just being kept for observation. So after a while, I start bleeding again. And so literally I'm lying in a pool of my own blood. It's just like all the paper is just covered in blood. And at that moment, a nurse comes in to just check on me. Thank God she did, or I wouldn't be here. And she opens the door and she looks, and her jaw just drops, and she's like, oh, and then I hear the call go through the hospital on the loudspeakers, and it's stat. We need an OBGYN stat to the ER. And I'm thinking, wow, well, at least, this is good. They know something is wrong with me. So, they're going to figure out what's wrong. And I lie there, and then this elderly gentleman comes running in full speed, and he's got a younger physician behind him. And my thoughts are that, oh my gosh, he's an older person. He's definitely going to know what to do with me. He's been through a couple of things in his life. And so then he and his assistant try to examine me. Another large blood clot comes out. So at this point, I try to sit up and I say, I don't feel too good. And right away, he knows what's going on. So he just like pushes me back down onto the bed, and they start to tip it backwards. So my head goes down and my feet goes up to bring the blood back up to the vital organs in the brain. And I can hear the whole room just filling with medical personnel. And I have a nurse on my right that's got the putting on the blood pressure cuff. And I got a nurse on my left trying to get an IV placed in my arm. And I start to feel like I'm just falling. So imagine just like jumping out of an airplane and you don't have a parachute, and it's just this free feeling of a free fall, or being on an elevator that lost its cable, you're just plummeting through the chute. And it's that feeling of just falling. And then I hear the nurse on my right, and she's quoting my blood pressure as it keeps going down. And then she yells, 50/15, hurry. And they're still trying to get the IV in, because when your blood pressure drops that much and you're going into shock, the veins collapse. So it makes it really hard to get the IV in. And I remember thinking, what's taking them so long? Why can't she get it in? And it's at this point, it's shortly after that the nurse yells 50/15, hurry, that I know that I'm dying. And it's that feeling of knowing that you're dying is very different from when I was in the earthquake, when I thought I was going to die. Very different. When you're in a situation, you're almost in a car accident, and you're thinking your life is flashing before your eyes. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die. This was very different. I was completely aware of the fact that I was actually dying. So the atheist that I was, at that point, it's like you're hanging off a cliff with just your nails, because you're using all your energy to just hold on. And I just remember trying to hold on to my soul, because I could feel my soul separating from my body and being pulled out. And I remember just holding on and trying to pull everything back in. And so the atheist that I was, what did I do? I prayed to God to save my life. And this is not going to be about religion, but that's all I had left, was to ask to please let me live. And I pleaded with God, and I said, God, please let me live. I have 3 children under the age of 6. They need a mother, which is interesting too. I wasn't I needed to live because for my children, because they were so young. And that was the worst thing that I could imagine, was that they would have to grow up without a mother. And it's at this point that there is this extreme pull on my soul that I can feel it separating out from my body, and I'm trying to hold on for my life. But it is at a certain point, it just like it would just pop out. So 1 second I'm in my body, but the next second I'm not. But that transition happens so fast that I can't really comprehend how fast it happened, because 1 second I'm there and the next second I'm outside. But being on the outside of my body, there was this feeling of unconditional love and peace and calm. And I knew that there was no time on the other side, and that I had access to information, past, present, and future. But I didn't even leave the emergency room, and I didn't see my body from above. Like many times you hear people, they turn around and they look down at their body. I did not look down. I was just outside my body. I was floating above my body. But then there was also this awareness that almost like that would be an invisible cord or something, but that I was somehow attached to my body. This sounds weird, but there was a knowing that I was attached to that body, and that was my house. That's where my soul lived. I belonged in that body, but right now I was just outside, almost like you're in a car and you step outside of the car, then you get back in your car. You know it's your car, and your body goes in that car. And it was that kind of a feeling, like the soul just jumped out, but I belonged down there in that body. But there's also, everything just makes perfect sense when you are in that state. But it's not like my second NDE, which is very different. It's not like I've left and gone to a different realm. I'm still in the ER. I'm still in that room, but I'm in a different dimension at the same time. So I call it like the in-between state, because I just jumped out of my body. I haven't gone all the way. I'm just outside, and then I go back in. But then getting back into the body happens as quickly as getting out of the body. And if you guys have ever seen the movie Santa Claus with Tim Allen, when he gets sucked back in through the chimney, and it's like, it was like that. It was like a giant vacuum hose that would just suck my soul back in. And again, it's that split second. 1 second I'm out here, and the next second I'm back in my body. But it happens so quickly that I can't really comprehend that, the speed of that happens. So then they injected me with all these different medications, and kept me in the hospital for another 48 hours. And then I was sent on my way. And again, I never really got a good explanation for why I was bleeding. And when so the next day I'm in this hospital, and I can't even keep my head on the pillow because I've lost so much blood. And my sister-in-law had just passed away 3 days earlier. And I'm lying in bed, and I became aware, I know that it's my sister-in-law in the left corner of the ceiling. And she says, you're going to be okay. And I'm thinking, I must be crazy, because I don't believe, I had already had an experience of leaving my body. And I thought, maybe this is all in my head. Maybe I'm going crazy. I don't know what's happening to me. And now I'm hearing my sister-in-law speaking to me in this hospital room. I just didn't even know what to make out of it. And I was afraid of telling anyone. The nurse came into my room, and she said, did anything happened to you yesterday? And she was kind of poking around, and I was so afraid of telling her anything, because I figured they were going to lock me up in a mental institution or put me on medications or something. But she might actually have been a big help, because she was probably aware of near-death experiences. To me, it was just, I just thought I was going crazy. So then they sent me home. My parents stayed, changed their trips back to Sweden 3 times, because they had come to visit to help with a birth. And my daughter was born at the end of June. And this happened, in mid-July. So it was almost 2 months later, so now it's September, and then my mother-in-law comes to help after my parents go home. And now it's September, so I pretty much slept for 2 months. That's what I'm told, that I just slept for 2 months because I was so sick. And then everybody finally leaves. They said, okay, she's well enough that she can sit up now. And then we had, friends that would come and help us, and all these different people. But I pretty much sat in a rocking chair for the next 9 months. And I was so sick. And every night I went to bed, I would say a prayer, and it would be, please let me wake up tomorrow, because my children need me. Because every day I didn't know if I was going to make it to the next day. And I spent 9 months sitting in the rocking chair, and I would be too tired to even put the baby down. So this baby just kind of spent 9 months in my arms. And then the following summer, now what has happened is we have all had pneumonia, and I got sick, and I got sick again, and I had pneumonia again, and something is not right. So now it's 11 months. My daughter is 11 months. And I get pneumonia again. And it's May, so it's beginning of summer. We're living in California, so it's nice and warm. So you should not get pneumonia. And I started getting bruises everywhere. And I bumped into the baby's changing table, and it would give you, normally it would give you a tiny, tiny little bruise on my hip, but my bruise spanned my entire hip, and it was just purple and red. My teeth were loose, my hair was falling out, and I would tell my husband, I feel like a 7-year-old because all my teeth were wiggling. So I knew something was really wrong. And so I ended up having bone marrow suppression, and that means that you have pancytopenia, meaning you don't have enough white blood cells, red blood cells, or platelets. So I was really sick, and I kept a stool a tall stool in my kitchen by the stove for the next 5 years. So for like 6 years, I had a stool in the kitchen because I could not stand up long enough to cook dinner for my children or cook lunch for my children. I had to sit down. And I remembered my 90-year-old grandmother had a stool in her kitchen. And that's how I functioned. And I would have the time when I went to the grocery store, because I couldn't stand in line because I would feel faint. People would come up to me and ask me, are you okay? You look like you're going to pass out. And I would say, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm thinking, oh, I got like 30 more seconds before I have to sit down. And I would often have to sit down in the stores. I couldn't walk through a store from one end to the other without feeling faint. So I would have to sit down, put my head down. So there was this, this problem of me being really sick, but also I had this problem of my soul never wanting to stay in my body. And I'm not sure whether that is like a soul merging problem, like the soul just didn't get back all the way in after my near-death experience, or if it was because I was just so sick during these years that, I was walking this fine line between life and death, not realizing how sick I really was. So I also had all these electrical interference. All my watches would stop. The TV would turn on when I walked by, and all these crazy stories, which I talk more about in my book. But so with all these things going on, and constantly all day, I would have this feeling of my soul wanting to leave. So now it's around October in 1994. So it's a little bit more than 2 years since my first near-death experience. And I would often wake up at night and just feel weak and faint, feel like my soul is leaving. This was just my existence. And I would take my head off the pillow, put my head down flat, and just, again, just hold on. That was my life. My daily life was just, not now, I can't leave, you got to stay. And I would always feel like I'm holding on to my soul. So then one night I, have the same experience. I wake up, I feel weak and dizzy. I take my head off the pillow, I lie down. But this time I'm holding on to my soul, but I can't hold on. And again, it's in a split second, my soul just pops out. But now, instead of staying in the room, this time I just traveled through this darkness. It was more like tumbling through outer space, just in darkness. There was no tunnel, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. I'm just tumbling through darkness. But then I get to this place that I call the mid station, because there was this awareness that there were like levels below me and levels above me, that you could go higher or you could go lower. And I call it the bouncing station. So as if you arrive there by mistake, then you get bounced back. It's like a bouncing station. So I get to this what I call the mid station, and when I get there, the first thing I see is a log cabin. So I look to the right and I see this log cabin, but I hear the most beautiful music that you can't even make on the earth plane. And so I look inside this log cabin because I'm thinking the music must be coming from the log cabin. So I open the door, I look inside, but the log cabin is empty. So then I look to my left and there is an exact replica of the cabin to the right. So I look inside and again, the cabin is just empty. But then I become aware of this radiant white light, but it's behind me. So it's like as if my soul is turning around, but now I am standing in this light. But the music that I'm hearing is coming from the light. And in this light, there is an outline of angels. But I didn't believe in angels, but still, this is what I'm seeing. And so the music is coming from the light, which is coming from the angels. But this light it's just an unconditional love. And it's this knowing that I'm part of this light. It's like I am the light. I come from the light. I return to the light. It is just this unconditional love, but it's everywhere. It's hard to describe it. It's everywhere and around you at the same time. And it's like I was in the light and I am the light. I am part of that light. And it's that feeling of you wouldn't want to leave, because why would you want to leave? Because this is just unconditional love and you're just being enveloped by this love. But then I become aware of a spirit guide. And there's two spirit guides. There's one on my right and one on my left, but I don't actually see the spirit guides. I'm just aware of their presence and I can hear them communicating. So it's like this telepathic communication. And the spirit guide on my right says to the spirit guide diagonally to the left in front of me, what is she doing here? She can't be here. She has to go back. This is why I call it the bouncing station, because it's almost like I got there by accident and I wasn't supposed to be there. And I say, no, wait a second. How can this be? How can I be outside of my body and still be me? How does this work? And the spirit guide on my left, diagonally in front of me, said, well, if I told you, you wouldn't remember, but you will remember this. And it's that I've heard other people talk about it as if there is like a way that they can control what they want you to remember. But then it's just like an image just appeared. But now it's like I'm standing on the moon looking down on the earth. But around the earth is this like a diamond shaped, silvery, glittery, what I call a fishnet, because I grew up in Scandinavia in Northern Europe, and my grandmother would lay fishnets early in the morning, and I would be, the little kid that's rowing the boat. And when she lifted those nets out of the ocean early in the morning, and the sun would hit those water droplets on the fishnet, they would glitter in the sunlight. So to me, looking down on the earth, seeing this silvery, glittery net around the earth, which I now know that we call the grid. But back then, this is, in 1994, we barely had internet back then. So to me, it looked like a fishnet. But then the spirit guide said that everything on earth is connected to each other, but everything on earth is connected up to this grid. And it is with that, it's really literally taken me a quarter of a century to keep working on that message, what that message mean. And it hasn't really started to make sense until, the last few years. And literally it's been, more than 25 years ago. And with that, I was sent back. And again, just tumbling through darkness and then I'm back in my body in a split second. But it is what happens after having an experience like this. What happened to me is unique to my path, and what happens to other people is unique to their path. That's how I look at these experiences. So what happened is that I became clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient. And I had already received several messages from the spirit world, and I wasn't sure. This started, the day after my first NDE, and I heard my sister-in-law, but then it just kept coming. All other spirits that had passed away and family members would show up. And again, I didn't know what to make out of all of it, because I figured, well, I must be crazy and maybe I'm imagining all of this. So then I became clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, and I started seeing things and hearing things before they would happen. So I would start writing things down, and I would make sure to tell my family and my kids, so I would have some kind of evidence of what it was I was experiencing, because I was thinking, maybe I'm going crazy. I have to write it down. It's the only way I'm going to know if it's my brain making this up or if it's something that's actually happening. So I talk about the different stories, in my book, but I'll tell you one story, because these stories are so good because they're verifiable. So one morning I wake up and I see 3 slides. And so the first slide is of our van, and on the passenger van's door where the kids get in and out of the car, there is a big black scratch going across the door. The second slide I see is 2 kids in the car. One is in the front seat and one is in the back seat. And I know it to be my middle child and my youngest child. And then the third slide, I see a black sedan car, and I'm leaving a note on the windshield of that black sedan car. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is so weird. If we're going to be in an accident, what happened to that driver of the other car? So I tell my kids, and these 2 children, I'm driving into San Francisco. We lived in California in East Bay. And so every day they went to school in the city, I would have to drive them across the Bay Bridge and into the city. And we figured out which would be the most likely intersection, because we would have to have oncoming traffic, if we were turning left, in order to be hit on the right-hand side of the car. So every day my kids' noses are pressed up against the windows and saying, Mom, the coast is clear, you can go. So this goes on for, about 10 days or 2 weeks or something. And then one day we're at our little local bookstore, and I come out of the garage, and I'm trying to squeeze on to this narrow street. I'm trying to make a right-hand turn, and there's a big truck in the parking lot that's offloading boxes, and all these other cars trying to come in. And as I turn right onto that street, there is a black sedan car parked right at the corner. So I'm squeezing right behind that car. And guess what? So the right-hand side of my car scrapes that black sedan car. So I already know what has happened and what my car is going to look like. So I get out of my car, I walk around, and I look at this scratch, and I just lose it. I'm just laughing so hard. I'm standing on the street because I was just so happy that it was finally over. And everybody's just staring at me. They must have thought I was absolutely nuts. So, but we were just happy that, it was over. And then, of course, here I am leaving that note on the windshield of a black sedan car because it didn't have a driver. The car was parked. So these are the kinds of things that, would happen, starting, literally the day after my first near-death experience, and they would just get more and more and more. And after my second near-death experience, it was, even more of these visits. And then if we fast forward 12 years after my first near-death experience, so now it's 2004, and I'm in my living room. So now it's been 12 years of this, of seeing things before they happen, knowing who is going to die, knowing who in the family is sick, and calling them a warning, you got to go back to the hospital. All these different things just kept happening. So now it's been 12 years. So now I know spirit speaks, or a spirit guide speaks to me. I listen because I've been doing it now, and I know that what I'm hearing is the truth. So this is what I call that was my training wheels, was 12 years of training wheels to learn to listen to spirit and to be in tune with the spirit world. So I'm in my living room and I'm trying to go to the kitchen, and I sense a spirit guide coming into the room, and I stop, and this spirit guide says, you have to become a naturopathic doctor. You have to combine East and West, which is essentially what naturopathic medicine is. It's old medicine and new medicine combined. And you will bring messages and healing to the people. And I said, what do you mean messages and healing to the people? It doesn't make any sense. And then you have to write 2 books. No, wait, 3. And I said, write a book about what? I'm not an author. I've never even thought of myself as an author. But the spirit guide, all he said was, when the time is right, we will tell you what that means, what the messages mean, what book you're going to write. Right now, just focus on becoming a doctor. So literally, I was enrolled in my prereq medical school classes within 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, I had gotten my transcripts from other universities, applied into this college, and done everything, and was already enrolled. And that's what happens when you've been receiving messages for 12 years, because you just know this is it. So I did all my prerequisite classes. So imagine now, this is 2004. So I started my prereqs in 2004. That took about 4 years because I had to do it part-time because I still had kids at home. So I finished those in like 2008, 2009. I applied to medical school in 2010. I got accepted for 2011. And then I defer 1 year because I still had 1 child at home. And I went to medical school in 2012 and then graduated in 2016, which is 4 years ago now. It's a 5-year program that you did 2 years, then it's 2-year residency after that. So that's 7 years. So I finished that in 2018. But when you think about it, this all started in 2004. So this message about writing books. So I got that message and it came through, and the spirit world said, you are to write 2 books. No, wait, 3. That message I have received from 4 mediums, 2 in the United States and 2 in England. And the message comes through the exact same way each time. They're always talking to my mother. They say, oh, I have your mother with me. How are they supposed to know my mother is in the spirit world? Number 1. And then number 2, they say, your mother says that you're writing a book. And she says you're to write 2 books. No, wait, 3. That message comes through the exact same way. Nobody knew that I was writing a book when I would receive this message from all these different people, because all I had done was an outline. My own family didn't even know I was writing a book. Nobody knew I was going to write a book. So, and they received the message the exact same way. So now I'm out of med school. It's 2017, and I've been receiving these messages for years and years and years. And I'm still skeptical. It's one thing if a spirit drops in on me and I say, okay, I know it's my grandmother, or I know it's my uncle, or I know it's a spirit guide, and they're just coming and talking to me. But could you actually bring in a spirit for somebody else? So I was still very skeptic, even though I had all these experiences. I wanted proof that this is something you can learn to do, or if you're spiritual, or if you're in tune. So I went to Arthur Findlay College in England, which is a college of spiritualism and psychic science. And it is a world famous college for training mediums in evidence-based mediumship, meaning you have to be able to speak to the spirit so that you can say who it is with certain accuracy. So here I am doing my first reading with one of the teachers at the college. I'd never had a professional reading like that, so I didn't know exactly what to expect, and was still a skeptic, thinking she doesn't know anything about me. I'm from the other side of the world, but I was actually raised in Sweden. She thinks I'm from the United States, and there's no way she couldn't even guess, right? So this is how I go in, very skeptical. So the teacher says, oh yeah, I have your mother with me. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, right, prove it. So of course she proves it by telling me all these different things that only my mom would know about me. But then she starts talking about what I have been doing before I even came into the college. So I had left the United States a day early. So I would have one day in England to get myself on the right time schedule, because it was like an 8 or 9 hour time difference between the two countries. And I was really worried about getting dementia, because my mom in her last few years had dementia, and she passed away when she was 87. And she passed away my first year in medical school in 2012. And I was so afraid of getting dementia like my mom had. I said, I have to make sure I keep my brain active. So I literally watched 6 hours of this brain game show to keep my brain active, which is kind of humorous in itself. So here I am with my teacher, and she says, your mother is telling me that you are worried about getting like dementia, losing memory when you get old, because she did. And that's what happened to her. And she's also telling me that you're watching these brain game shows. And she said, you don't have to watch those brain game shows, because you're going to die from something else. So think about that for a moment. First of all, there's no way that the teacher would know that I sat in a hotel room a few days earlier. There's no way she would know that I was watching the show Brain Games. And there's no way she would even know that I was worried about getting dementia. So think about that proof. But also think about the fact that my mother knew that I wasn't going to die of dementia and I would die of something else. So she relieved me from that fear of having dementia. But now also it relieved me of all fear of having to, that I'm going to get anything that my relatives had, because we walk through life and we worry so much that, my mother had cancer, maybe I'm going to get cancer and die of cancer. My father had a heart attack, maybe I'm going to have a heart attack. And we spend all this energy worrying about it, when in fact, you might die from a bee sting eating dinner at a restaurant. You have no idea what you're going to die from, but we waste all this energy and worry about it. So that was another lesson in that message, is stop worrying about it and just enjoy your life. So with that, our existence here on earth is just so much more divine and complex than we can even imagine. And we are connected to everything. We are connected to each other, and we're connected up into the spiritual realm. But there is no death. There is only continuation of life on the other side without your physical body. Because we know, because we can communicate to the spirit world. So we know we survive, and we know from having these near-death experiences. But the fact that we can prove it by communicating with the spirit world, that's enough. That's enough proof that there is an afterlife. So thank you for listening. And also wanted to let everybody know that I just launched a new podcast. It's called Dr. Lotte, Science with Soul. And I'm hoping to bridge that gap between science and soul. And it's a mixture of medical interviews with doctors and alternative approaches to different kind of medical diseases, as well as spiritual leaders. So it will be a shamans and medium, famous medium people from Europe, probably. Next weekend, there will be an episode with PMH Atwater, who wrote 18 books on near-death experiences, and she's an international, I'm sure you're all aware of her. So that episode will air next Saturday. And if you want to see what I'm up to, or my classes, I teach classes in mediumship development, psychic development. I do readings for people, mediumship and psychic readings. I work with ancestral healing and different kinds of shamanic clearance things like of that nature as well. And then I work as a physician the other half of my time. So like my time is split between the two, because again, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bridge that gap between science and soul, and make people understand that we are really truly holistic creatures, and we're all connected to everything that is.
Thank you, Dr. Lotte. That was really interesting. My video's given up the ghost for some reason, so you won't be. But anyway, I can at least talk to you. So does anyone have any comments or questions that they have for Dr. Lotte?
It was just like we were on an exit point, you know. I couldn't say 100% for sure, but it felt more like it was from my chest area just popping out, because the feeling was of holding on to the soul that was rising up and out of my body, on the front part, the front chest, the whole abdomen. It's like I can't pinpoint the area, because it's just 1 second I was in my body and the next second I'm outside my body. But it was the feeling of almost like a shadow, like if in front of my whole body, you know what I'm saying? So it's almost like just being lifted out, up and out. Is that kind of a feeling. No, because I don't even know how I entered back in, to be honest, because it's just 1 second I was outside and the next second I was inside my body.
Yeah.
I know what you're like saying, like, is there an entrance point, like crown chakra or anything like that? I don't know. I can only tell you what that physical experience felt like, but I would not know if there was a certain exit point or entrance point in my body, because I can only speak from the physical experience of that. It's, to me, I call it a bouncing station, because the way I was greeted, what's she doing here? She has to go back. So I feel like I got to this place, but I wasn't really supposed to be there. That's kind of how it felt. But then I was there. But then I don't know, because then it's also my path. I had to have that experience in order to do what I'm supposed to do in my life. So who knows? I just call it the bouncing station, because there's this awareness that you could go in other places. There's this almost like an elevator. Like I got off on the 5th floor and the building has 10 floors. You know what I'm saying? It's just, that was just the feeling or the awareness of it. Almost like steps or different frequencies, different levels of something. Yeah. I mean, I've heard people talk about it, but for me, I didn't see a silver cord, but there was an awareness that there was some kind of an attachment, though I didn't see anything, but people do talk about the silver cord. And it was just, like I'm on a bungee cord or something, and I'm outside my body, and then I get sucked back in, belonging to the body down there. I was so obsessed with it afterwards, because I'm so scientific, and I would read Stephen Hawking's books on time, and I would just skip the equations, because I was like, oh my gosh, these math equations are crazy. And I just skip through those pages, searching in physics books, trying to understand, like, how does this work? How can you just pop out? Why is there no time on the other side? And I knew there was no time there, but there's time here. We live on a linear timeline, but on the other side, there's no time. And I was trying so hard to, it took me years and years and years of research. And eventually, after 12 years, I basically just said, that's it. I give up. Like, I don't care anymore. I had this experience, and that's it. So the first question, I became a very different person, because now all of a sudden, I wasn't an atheist anymore. I knew that life continues, because I had that experience of being outside my body, and I knew I was still there. It completely changed who I am as a person, because you get that unconditional love for all people, even if they're not your friends, you still like them. And I just became very accepting of everybody. like many NDEers, ended up in a divorce because you just change so much, and um, you're just different. I raised my children differently because of it, because I had uh, nothing really mattered anymore. And I would tell my kids, I don't care if you go to college. They would be panicking about, which college should I go to? What should I do when I grow up? I don't know what I want to do. And I would tell them, I don't care if you collect milk bottle caps, because if you love collecting milk bottle caps, the entire world will come and see your collection, because nobody's going to know milk bottle caps like you do. And other people would look at me and think I was crazy. Like, oh, you should tell them to go to Yale. You should tell them to go to Harvard, and be competitive. But to me, that all went away, and it was just teaching my children to live from their heart space. Just listen to your heart. That's what I would tell them. What your job as a child is just to figure out what you love to do, and stick with that. That love and passion for something, that's what you should do in life. It should be effortless, because you should just, when you work, that's who you are. That's what you're bringing to the people. That's what you're bringing to the world. That's what you incarnated for. It's to bring you to the world. And the second question, I think there are certain things we incarnate for. I think we incarnate to have certain experiences in our life. The way I look at it is that you incarnate with a backpack full of sticky notes. You had like a pad of sticky notes up in heaven, and you wrote down, okay, I'm going to get, a divorce, and, I'm going to have a near-death experience, and you have put all these sticky notes all over you, and then you go down to earth. And the more problems you solve, the lighter your backpack, because you keep offloading all these problems and the different things that you have to learn in life. So that's how I look at life, that we incarnate to have certain experiences. Or maybe you incarnated to meet this one specific person, because you have a contract with each other to have a certain number of children, and then you're going to go your different ways. So the way I look at life is that part of it is predetermined. It's like the contract you wrote before you incarnated for your soul to grow in this experience. And then that on top of that, it's just, things are random, and it's free will, because everything is free will in the end. We choose what we want to do. But then when you see things before they happen, like, when I saw the accidents, I knew my father was going to pass away. There's so many things that I would get warnings, so I would see things before they happen. So then I would say, well, is everything predetermined then? Or was the spirit world just showing me these things so that I would learn to listen to the spirit world, so that I could work with the spirit world? See what I'm saying? Maybe it was just for me to learn to listen to the spirit world, and that's why I had to have all those experiences, so I would pay attention when they speak, because that's part of my journey, is to work with the spirit world. But maybe it's really not predetermined. Maybe the spirit world just showed me these things to make them trust me, for me to trust that, for me to trust when they give me guidance. It could be either way. I wish I had wish I knew the answer to that, but we're not supposed to know. We wouldn't be life wouldn't be mysterious if we knew exactly how everything works.
Any other questions or comments? Because I've got one. I'd like to ask you, Dr. Lotte. Well, actually, it's a combination, because I've spent the last 32 years speaking to people who report close encounters with extraterrestrials. And I always find it really fascinating that people who have near-death experiences and people who report close encounters have the same after effects.
Oh, interesting.
So they become, spiritually engaged. They can have these spontaneous mediumship abilities appear, and they can become precognitive and become highly artistic, develop interest in healing, all those sorts of things. And so that to me sort of indicates that we're all hardwired in a certain way. And I wonder why we would be hardwired to have those after effects after certain types of experiences. You got any thoughts on that?
Well, the way I look at it is, it's just part of the path. I feel like, again, we go back to the contract of, this was an experience I had to have in my life in order to do what I'm here to do. because it shaped my entire life path, and has ever since those experiences. It's everything I do in life is based on that experience. And so it just shapes us. And maybe, you know, having these experiences, you know, makes these people that way. But everybody who has an NDE doesn't become a medium. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So it's just, you know, some people are supposed to have that experience, and it will help them. You know, I feel like I was a train going down the wrong track, and then they put me over here, and now I'm going down that track. But it's that experience that I had to have. I came from being an atheist. I didn't believe in anything. I was raised as a scientist. My father was a doctor. My mom worked in the hospital. My brother was a surgeon. So I was always around medical people growing up. And, you know, I came from that very, very scientific background. But the world is in a need of people that can help bring uplift consciousness and spirituality, and help people reconnect with the earth and understand where we come from, because we have sort of lost track of who we are and where we came from, and what this whole experience is all about. We've just become a consumerism kind of society, and we just think of, you know, getting the next car, getting the next house, instead of, you know, thinking about the earth itself and who we are as spiritual beings living on earth.
Yeah, so those types of experiences shape people, and a percentage of
Mm-hmm.
those in a particular way. I guess that's what my
Mm-hmm.
question or thoughts are around that is, you know, I just wonder why we're shaped in that particular way, you know, and it's like a percentage of those people. And I guess
Mm-hmm.
because I know you've got an interest in shamanism, so I know I tend to think of those people who develop those
Mm-hmm.
abilities as being shamanized by their
Mm-hmm.
experiences, but in a Western
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm. I think it helps to bring those experiences forward. When the first time I worked with Itzhak Beery, um, who is a world famous shaman and author of 3 books, um, it was me and like 10 or 12 other people in at 10,000 feet in Colorado in a teepee. And he took my hands and he looked at my hands and he said, "You were born a shaman." And I said, "I wasn't born a shaman." And he looks at me and he says, "Yes, you were. You were born a shaman." And then he started talking to me, and I started to understand that um, the things that I did as a child and the things that I saw as a child, that was, you know, that had I grown up in an indigenous culture, they would have known since I was a child. But I didn't grow up in that environment. I grew up with a father who was a physician, very scientific. Um, but I think to a certain extent, we already have incarnated with that ability, but then the near death experience, it sort of brings that out. Like it was always there, but I didn't know how to bring it out, or, you know, trust it and develop it. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
So
So it's like we already have it. It was already decided that I was going to have that experience. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Because it's just the more I look at everything, I look at astrological charts, you look at your
Mm,
numerology, and you look at your own life path and the people you met, the children you had, and your ancestors and what trauma they carried, and how everything just filters down, and everything just makes perfect sense when I
mm,
look at it like that, in the overall picture of my own life and my life experiences, and that I had to have, and then that I, you know, now I'm a medium and I work this way and I work that way. It was all supposed to be that way. I literally incarnated for this life. And it's just a matter of how many of those things that I wrote down on my sticky notes can I actually get done? That's how I look at it. How
yeah.
many of those sticky notes can I remember and recognize them when I see them? That, oh, here is another opportunity for me to learn about this, and then resolve that and let go and move on and do the next thing. It's kind of like, I just feel like I'm peeling off sticky notes as I go through life,
Yeah.
like solving one problem after another, right?
Yeah. So
And figuring different things out.
it sounds to me like you're saying that we're sort of seeded with those things to do when we come here, but then we have
Hmm.
experiences that catalyze it.
Right. Right. You could say that. I mean, if you signed up for it and you have the experience and then you recognize it and you listen to it. But I'm sure there are other people too that you incarnate, and it gives you opportunities to do certain things in this life and resolve certain things, but everybody doesn't do it. So then you just come back in your next life and do it over again. Because I always feel like, well, I don't want to do my life over. It was way too much work. I'm not doing this life over. So I'm going to make sure I figure out as much as I can in this life, because I don't want to have to go through all those 12 years of being sick and having near-death experiences. It was just so much work. So I always look at it that way. I'm not doing this life again. So what else am I supposed to learn? Please give me guidance. Please tell me what's next. And just keep, trying to live my life to the fullest. And because that's what we're here to do. We're just,
Yeah.
trying, we all try our best. So.
And that extended illness, sorry for hogging the time, folks, but I just wanted to ask you this.
Yeah.
That extended illness in your life is like a shamanic initiation experience, isn't it?
You broke up a little bit. Can you repeat that? The illness?
That the illness is acted like an initiation experience.
Right. You can say that too. The near-death experiences were an initiation. And then because of the after effects of where that came from, but then also being sick that long, it just taught me so much about life. I never thought I was going to get well. And then all of a sudden, after 10, 11 years, all of a sudden that last year, it was like, wow. Because I thought in 2004 or 2006, so that's when I was doing my pre-med classes, but in like around 2000, that was only 4 years earlier, I started a e-commerce business, online business. And it was back when these things were just starting to happen. But I had worked as a programmer at IBM in my youth. So I was pretty savvy with the technical stuff. And I thought at that point, which was only 4 years before I enrolled in pre-med classes, I thought I was never going to get well. I figured this is it. This is how good it's going to get. I'm just never going to be fully well. So, but then all of a sudden that last year, everything fell into place. My watch ticked for an entire year, 12 months after 12 years. And I said, this is it. I'm healed. My watch ticked for a whole year. And just, that it just was life-changing at that point.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't gone through that, I would never have been the kind of a doctor I am, because I understand my patients when they say that they're sick, and I listen to them. And there's so much, I don't know what it's like for you guys, but there's people dismiss people and say, I got 10 minutes for you and I don't have time to listen to you. So there's so many sick people out there that need to be listened to. And had I not gone through it myself, I wouldn't be the physician I am today. So I look at it part of the plan.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Because of the unconditional love, I think it's, I'm just so much more tolerant with people than other people are. Because even if they have faults or, I always feel, I always have unconditional love towards them anyway. It is this, it's just different than before my NDE, because it's just, you just love everybody. It's just different. It's just, you know what I'm saying? It's sure that those of you who have had NDEs can relate. You're more sensitive towards everybody. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. You're more tolerant, because things that used to matter don't matter anymore. Because I changed so much that different things are important. Things that were important before the NDE are no longer important. Yeah, so we worry a lot about things that we don't need to worry about, and especially when we can't change the outcome, we worry about things that we don't need to worry about. But then I would say, you can also not sit down and say, if I want to be an engineer, it's just going to happen. You obviously have to take steps to make that happen. You have to go to school and you have to study, and then you'll become an engineer. You know what I'm saying? So you can't just sit. Some people feel like, I've gotten this question before. People say, well, can I just sit on my sofa and wait to become a millionaire? No, you can't. You actually have to do something about it. You have to put a plan into place. You got to take small steps that leads to bigger steps, and keep working towards that. But if you do all those things, then you put all that energy into motion, so it's like a snowball that rolls down the hill. So, but you have to set the intention with action, because you have to set the energy into motion. Otherwise it's not going to move. You know what I'm saying? So you have to take action to make things happen. But once you take an action to make things happen, then the snowball just starts rolling, and then that you will have an outcome from that, which is probably the outcome that you're looking for. But you can't just sit on the sofa and stare at the wall and hope that things are going to happen. Oh, absolutely. It's life is a gift. And I think, many times people go through hardships in life, and we forget that it's a gift, and we get worried and about health problems or financial problems. We lose our jobs, and there's so many things. We lose our loved ones that happen, and life just seems really not like a fun place to be. But once we understand, in the end, everything works out. Life is like a roller coaster. We go through, the valleys, and we climb up the next mountain, and we go through another valley. And that's just what life is like. If we were always dancing in the streets, life wouldn't be that exciting. If we were out dancing in the streets every single day, it's fun to dance in the streets because it only happens, once in a while, and everybody's really happy about something. But that's just life, and that's how we learn, is to go through those ups and downs. Yeah, so people would just pop in, starting right after my first near-death experience, and I knew it was my sister-in-law. A year later, I knew my uncle had passed away because he came to visit in the middle of the night. I couldn't see him, but I knew he was there, and I could communicate with him. And he had come to say goodbye. And then I waited for my mom to call me the next day. She didn't call. I waited for her to call the next day. She didn't call. Finally, she called him the third day. And she said, "Oh, I wanted to tell you something sad happened." And I said, "Yeah, your brother passed away." And she said, "How did you know?" And I said, "Because he was here 3 days ago." And it turned out he had passed away that 3 days earlier. And so the spirit world would just drop in on me, and I didn't see them, but I knew it was who it was. And if I didn't know who it was, I would know it to be a spirit guide. And I didn't know, I just knew it was a spirit guide. I didn't know the spirit guide's name. I didn't know, who it was, but just that it was a guide that was giving me guidance. So yeah, and then it just developed over the years. So I've been meditating for probably 25 years since the first NDE. It was just something that I started doing because I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't really know anything about meditation. I would just, lie in bed and be quiet and empty my mind and try and hear the spirit world or hear the spirit guides. So in terms of developing it, I think it's just the more quiet you are, the more you will be connected, because it's that creating that stillness within yourself, within your heart space, because you have to create that stillness, like in the physical world. You have to be able to first of all, you have to be able to hear and see in the physical world in order to tune into the spirit world, because you have to calm yourself down enough in this physical world to tune into the spirit world. So the best thing to do is just to sit quietly. In the beginning, 15 minutes seems like a long time, but before you know it, you'll be sitting still, for an hour easily every day. And when you've been sitting, what's called sitting in the power, it's sitting in that stillness for an hour every day, for a year or two. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes time, it takes practice to bring that stillness in. you will become more and more in tune with that which you cannot see, touch, and see in the physical world, but you tune into the other realm because you've created that stillness and peace within yourself. Maybe we change frequency or something happens, I'm not sure. So if it's a spirit guide, I'm having a communication with somebody else. Just like when I do a mediumship reading and I bring in a spirit for somebody else, I will say, I have your grandmother with me, and she looks like this, and she passed away when she was 80 years old, or in her 80s, and I might even know how they passed away, or this woman had breast cancer, and I'm communicating with something else. I'm communicating with the spirit, or I'm communicating with a spirit guide. So that's different than my higher self. My higher self would just be, so that's how I look at it. It's like my own records, my own, what I incarnated for, in my own journey, my own path, which is different because that's just me, or my higher self. What I'm thinking of, it's coming from me. It's not coming from something else.
I just wanted to say thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure. It's been fun.
And I want to be the first person to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, because I will not see you before then. So have a wonderful time. I know it's early, but have a wonderful time, and stay safe and enjoy yourselves over the holidays.
Merry Christmas,
Yeah, you too.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lotte.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.